Hello and welcome to the Southbound Sports Show. I'm your host, Richie Leahy, here with my co-host, Matty B. And it happened again. The Big Ten wins a third straight national championship. And I see that Ohio State fans are not taking it well, which is surprising to me. Because if there was one team out there where the fans should really be upset, it's Penn State. Right? They haven't won a national championship in like 40 years. And this was supposed to be the year. I mean, it might even be exactly 40. I don't know. Maybe a year or two off. But they had the number one hyped. They followed the blueprint. Because I see a lot of people complaining about, whoa, Indiana had like a bunch of old people, especially Ohio State and Michigan fans, which, I mean, everyone knows I'm a Michigan man myself. I don't understand why the fans of our team don't realize that we did the same exact thing in 2023. You use NIL to bring back your veteran players to take a run at a national championship. It's exactly what Indiana did. The only difference is Indiana had one of the lowest original recruiting rank team talent composites of any playoff contender of all time, which makes this even more special for the job Cignetti did as head coach. Because it was even like all the other data that had been tracked is that you had to be borderline, if not top 10 to win a national championship. I think the Clemson had a team that was like 15th maybe. I think the Harbaugh Michigan was right around 10, 12-ish. I don't know what the other Clemson ones were. But, of course, all the other big guys, Alabama, Ohio State, they've been racking up talent before NIL. And that's where I see a lot of SEC teams that are just out of touch. I joked with you, Matt, because Alabama fans on their like sports forums now are pondering if they had actually been cheating using bagmen before NIL. Like, yeah. Did you not notice? Players can't just be driving around sports cars at age like 17 or 18. You have to be in denial. And honestly, now, it doesn't even matter. So the people that are getting mad and saying things like, oh, you have, your team is just all NIL, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't matter to me. Because what's the difference in like Major League Baseball? Unlimited salary cap. You see the Dodgers making moves and hiring just all the best players to continue their dynasty. That, to me, is more egregious because you only have a limited amount of players and a limited amount of owners. Like Mark Cuban tried to buy the Pirates. The owners said, like, no. Remember that?
Yeah.
So they can say, hey, we don't want the Pirates to be good, which kind of singles out all the Pittsburgh fans, and that's why I can't cheer for the Pirates. They bring in an owner that they know can be a lackey and just continually use that team as a farm team to bring players out. Now, in college football, though, Mark Cuban admittedly doesn't invest ever. Cignetti comes in, sells him on the team, probably gets other big donors that haven't donated. A lot of them probably big basketball fans. I think that's the one thing that I saw that I thought was funny. Like even Indiana fans altogether were like, we have a lot of people here that have never, ever attended a football game, even as a student. I mean, we've all seen the photos. There was that one from a couple years ago, the Michigan overtime game. I don't know if you saw it floating around, but you know how in overtime you go back and forth? There were so little fans there that they would walk from end zone to end zone. Like the entire stadium just shifted down to the other end zone as the overtime flipped. I think it was a Michigan game, which is hilarious, right? Like, hey, yeah, I can't see from my seat. I'm going to walk all the way to the other end zone and watch the game. So as everyone just walks to their side, the fans moved with it. And so that's why, to me, it's such an impressive job. It's more impressive than what any other coach has done. And I don't know how anyone else can compare it to, like, oh, Ohio State fans. They think there has to be some type of cheating, which I know you messaged me about talking on the show. I think we dismissed it last week, but maybe I didn't even bring it up. But it just shows the level of entitlement of some of these programs thinking, well, Indiana has the most losses of all time. They don't deserve a championship, right? Miami, unbelievable the amount of press they got before that game. Do you agree?
Well, I think it seems like they really want to try to push for Miami to be back. And I mean, we've joked about it for a while because they've been joking about being back for 20 years now. And they have 0 national championships and 0 conference championships. Like, they can't even win the ACC. And they got nothing to show for all this.
And that's the one thing that really stood out to me. And the funny thing is, I listened to the entire ESPN pre-show radio thing because I was traveling still from the holiday weekend. And they talked about Miami and Ohio State and Alabama and the SEC so much on the pregame show that I was honestly baffled. Everybody picked Miami to win. When they talked about okay, well, what do the analytics say? Well, the analytics and stuff say that Indiana will win the game. But I'm picking Miami because they're bigger and faster. Was almost like the entire premise. Ohio State wasn't bigger and faster than Miami to begin with. Right? And they beat Ohio State. And they kept talking about going back to how Miami and Ohio State had these great battles in the early 2000s, that one championship game. And I was thinking, did they even play any other time before that? It was almost like they were using Ohio State like a NFL alum comparisons because Indiana really doesn't have any. That's the only thing I can think of. But to your point, Ohio State's in the same boat. Yeah, they won the national championship last year. Maybe that's why they kept bringing them up. I don't know. And there were similarities. Both teams didn't win their conference. Ohio State hasn't won the Big Ten since before NIL. It's been that long. They're 1-4 or whatever it is against Michigan. And they're kind of floating around with, yeah, we're a 2-loss national champ. And they're trying to throw them up, talking about how the 2-loss Ohio State and how much talent they had and how Miami's 2-loss team. And they were comparing them to 2019 LSU. And to me, it was almost like, guys, they didn't even win the ACC. You're talking about this Miami team coming into the game like they're undefeated. Why are you comparing them to LSU? It made no sense the entire pregame. And just saying well, they're bigger. And then they talked about how it was just so out of character how they lost to Louisville and SMU, 2 teams that were also smaller, right? And so I just couldn't get my head. I couldn't wrap my head around it.
But I think when you look at Miami in recent years, they had some teams that were record-wise really bad. But even during those really bad down years, they still had a lot of talented athletes on their program. And I feel like the same thing that hurts Miami is part of the reason that I don't really care for them is that they're just not likable. They had the cheap shots on Mendoza. They had at least 3 roughing the quarterbacks on Mendoza and late hits that should have been penalized and targeting penalties that weren't called. And I feel like they encourage that level of undisciplined play that inevitably comes back to bite them. They go for the trying to run the score up, which is why they blew that game to Georgia Tech last year. They have these brain fart situations where there was a 3rd and 15 and they had a face mask penalty to start the third quarter. There's always just undisciplined plays that Miami makes, and to Indiana's credit, Cignetti just through the sheer power of autism just is dialed in.
Well, see, that's the one thing that kind of shocked me because they were letting the players play. But then at the end of the game, you can't just let the Miami defender hold the guy on that one. Was it a fade route, or I can't remember what it was, but he was wide open and the ball kind of fluttered because it looked like he didn't see the ball. But then on the replay, no, the defender just yanked him back. And
that was the whole game.
Yeah, that was the game. The entire game, it felt like, okay, they're just letting him grab him.
Like, I can't believe that you would call that penalty.
Well, yeah, that's what the commentators were driving me nuts. Like, to not have a dog in the fight, right? I didn't care who won. It's funny that Indiana won, but then again, they're 16-0. They're like the only team that went 16-0. And then their fans have been talking about how they have the last undefeated team in football and basketball, and their fans can be a little obnoxious, knowing them from the Big Ten. Now, they haven't won anything in my lifetime. I don't think in basketball or football. Maybe soccer, but like that's not a big time TV sport here in the U.S. I don't know how I don't think there can be any more obnoxious because to the same point, you have to have a certain level of talent where, yeah, they're bringing in recruits, but a lot of those were still JMU guys, which give him credit to Cignetti. He's obviously connecting with the players enough that he took a job. He didn't jump to like Alabama or Ohio State or one of these other big jobs and then just brought all his guys with him. I mean, I guess looking at like Kyle Whittingham, what he did from Utah, where he took a couple of like their best players to Michigan. At some point, like Cignetti was able to sell these guys on Indiana, right? So having a precedent where like Urban Meyer goes from like Florida, and then all of a sudden he's like taking all these Florida recruit type guys to Ohio State after he pretended he was sick and didn't want to coach anymore, right? So like there's like a guy that could do that. It's one thing to jump from like another power program and then poach all the players, but Cignetti went from JMU, and so those guys were going to go to a big time program most likely anyway. We've seen it happen where guys from like Coastal Carolina or wherever come through. I thought it was very bold of Mendoza really to call out Miami because I didn't realize, I think both of his parents were legacy. And I don't know if you saw that interview, Matt. He was willing to walk on to be their quarterback, and they told him no. And then he went to Cal after he had his good year there. Miami was really trying to pitch him on transferring, and he remembered that, saying like, guys, I wanted to walk on, right? You told me no. Who tells a walk-on no? And so he stuck to his guns. He went to Indiana. He basically made his own path. And then for him to play in Miami, with where I'm guessing he's from, like maybe I'm wrong, I don't know, because that's where his hometown team was. Like that's where his parents went. That's what he liked growing up. He wanted to go there. They told him no. He had a chance of redemption. He could have went there, but whatever. Living out of spite. Wins a Heisman and a national championship over the team that wouldn't let you walk on. Awesome.
So is Miami the first team to lose a home national championship game?
Well, they kept talking about how like 3 of their other national championships were all home games. And I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. Right? Can't have your own stadium. That was actually part of the pregame where I'm guessing it was like a sportscaster down there in Miami that went to Miami maybe, and she was trying to give like the runaround on why Miami couldn't really have a home stadium of its own because it was like not enough space and how this is only an hour away. And I was like, lady, no one cares about this runaround of why they have to play at the Dolphin Stadium. Like, just admit they don't have fans. Just say they don't have fans. Like, they're not selling out because it's an hour away, but they can't have one on campus. And I listened to her like talk about it.
I was just thinking, well, maybe if they do win, that'll be like another argument for the Pitt fans. Where like, well, we have to share a stadium with the Steelers. It can be done.
Well, she was trying to like explain why Indiana had more fans than Miami at the game, and it was awesome how Miami is different. They had 100 NFL guys come on, and they show them on the sidelines, Matt, like they're playing the game, right? Like Ray Lewis is dressed up. He looked like the Notre Dame mascot. I think it was Ray. On the sidelines, like hands on his hips, like he's in the game or coaching. And I'm thinking, these guys have no impact on the game. They were saying about like how players from Miami stay together, and that's why they're better than any other program because people live in Miami when they retire. So all these ex-players are at practice and hanging around. And I'm like, it's not a distraction, right? You look over and like you have
you walk around looking like someone's grandma, big hat.
I didn't understand that. Where ESPN was hyping them up as like, this is the Miami we all know. Like, we all know like a 2-loss Miami that didn't win the ACC or win in their conference. Like, okay.
But you know, there is one program that can make Georgia DUIs and paying off players and everyone else. Like, they can make the SEC look better by having Miami be relevant.
Well, see, that's what I'm wondering.
Because Miami genuinely gives everyone a team that they can all mutually hate.
Well, from the perspective of them like tampering, and yeah, I know they're not going to like go out on tampering, but there were a couple stories that came out today. I don't know if you saw them, where I think they were trying to flip that quarterback from Duke, and like I've said all along, the NIL stuff is going to figure itself out because these guys are starting to sign contracts where you have an exclusive marketing deal. There's going to be an out where like you sign it, you can't, it's like a non-compete. You can try to do a buyout, but you set the buyout out so that another school doesn't come in unless they're throwing like tons of money to buy it out. And I see people say like, well, you can't buy out a contract ever. It's like, no, they buy them out all the time. Right. It just comes down to how desperate is the program. And like Beck's out there saying like, well, he graduated from Georgia 2 years ago, so he hasn't really been going to class or whatever. He signs up for like the bare minimum. And I think that's where the NCAA can kind of step in and they should say like, all right, the one thing we can enforce is to make sure that the players are doing a degree, right? If you graduate 2 years ago, that's great. But you have 2 years, you should be able to get your master's degree by then. You shouldn't just be mailing it in. So you should be able to have like a certain level of class load to make it like you can't just be like not hanging out on campus at all and then not going to class and then showing up and playing in the national championship. That's a little ridiculous. That's like the entire thing that I think that's what a lot of fans don't want to see.
That sounds like a hater.
Me?
He got a degree. Who cares? Yeah, who cares? He already has a degree that he can work for ESPN as a commentator for the rest of his life.
He's not going to get that level. And his degree wasn't even from the team he was playing for in the championship.
So it doesn't matter.
That's what makes college special. You can have class with these guys.
It just means more.
You can have an apartment on campus where you see your coach hanging out. Bro, like, there's just a different level to it than like a pro guy. And I think the NCAA, the only thing they should really do is enforce like the class load. I know you can't like go through and do the academics. There's rumors coming around like that Marcus Freeman really put the squeeze on the admissions because historically they've been kind of stuck in the past, like Michigan, where you don't take, they're not taking transfers, or they used to not take transfers. I know Michigan still does, where they block transfers if they don't have the credit path to graduate on time or whatever it is, whatever their timeline is. So it's really hard for Michigan to get like juniors to transfer in. And you saw it fail with Juwan Howard, where he had like 3 basketball players come in. And that's the difference with like Dusty May coming in. You have to recruit guys that are like on the graduate level, like Beck for Miami. And so it's like a little bit different. And then all of a sudden this year, Notre Dame throws that all out. And they're just pulling in every recruit that they want. And it's like, okay. And then it came out through like their insiders I saw saying like Marcus Freeman went in there and told him like, do you guys want to compete or not? Right, we missed the playoffs. He was on his like press tour, and I saw a lot of people making fun of him, saying like he was like basically picking Notre Dame to get a national championship, and they were saying like he could claim it like as a joke. But I don't understand why Notre Dame is mad. They played Miami. They lost. Like there's no argument like, oh yeah, we lost to the runners up. That's like an Ohio State logic. Like, hey, we lost to Indiana. We should be number 2. Right? Doesn't matter that we lost to Miami too. Come on. And their fans are like mad, whatever. I don't even know what they finished. But they're like, investigate Indiana. There's no way they could be beating us. And Ryan Day. And so Penn State, man, circling back around, of all the programs, they had to be the most upset because you watched your team had more talent than Indiana. Heck, you almost beat them. Even without a coach, you could have beat Indiana.
Well, I said going forward, I think this national championship kind of highlighted what this new portal era is going to be like. Because when you look at some of these coaches, it's really easy for them to sit on their high horse and say, like, just blow smoke at potential recruits. And I feel like where it's going to pay off in the long run is these colleges are now going to have to maintain, very similar to the NFL, some of the scouting reports and say, okay, we're recruiting this guy. Maybe we don't have the NIL that Michigan or Texas that's going to throw a bunch of money at them. We'll wait a year or two, and then whenever their NIL deals up and they're able to transfer out, if they have if they build a good relationship with them in their recruiting pathway, maybe you have an opportunity to pull them back in later on. If you're just a dick to some of these recruits, like, I think it's going to come back. Like, I think Brian Kelly's going to have a hard time going forward. If the rumors about like how impersonal he is, like, that's going to come back.
Did he get hired yet?
I don't think.
I don't think so either. That's why I wanted to see if I didn't know if you heard something.
No, but I like everything that from his Notre Dame time to his LSU, that he just does not seem like a personable person, that it's going to come back to bite you.
Well, that's where I want to see where Cignetti goes, right? He had a lot of guys that are with him. And the one thing that a lot of people don't realize either is the COVID eligibility year is rolling off now because we're, 5 or 6 years removed from that. So some of these guys that have been playing like Carson Beck, they're not going to have that extra year. Now, where Indiana's different is, you're right, they're not recruiting at the level that the other Big Ten teams are. There's probably at least, 5? 6 maybe, if you count Nebraska. You have Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State from the traditional Big Ten that are going to out-recruit Indiana pretty much no matter what. Then you also bring in USC and Oregon that are going to out-recruit them. And then you have maybe Nebraska because they're always around like that range 20. Now, because Indiana won a national championship, they could jump up. I just don't think they're going to have the traditional clout to out-recruit some of those big guys. So I'm curious to see how that's going to change because it took Clemson, a couple years? I mean, they had to compete for 2 national championships. Indiana has had a 2-year run so far. Last year, their run didn't really go too far. They lost to they lost to Notre Dame, I think, in the first round of the playoffs, of their playoffs last year. So now Cignetti, is he going to target guys that are maybe not as highly recruited and coach them up again? And is he going to have I don't want to say patience, is he going to have the ability to convince these guys to stay until their senior year? Because right now they're going to have a target on their back where every coach, and we see this with every coach that goes on a run. We see with Dabo, you saw it with like Harbaugh, you see with Kirby Smart, and even Saban, where they're operating at a level, they're getting so many guys drafted that every program out there is going to be hitting on their guys, tampering with them, basically saying like, "Hey, we know you're a great guy if you're on the roster at this school. You're not playing? Why don't you come out and transfer to Nebraska?" Right? Using that as like an example because they're thirsty, right? Nebraska hasn't won forever. They watch Indiana win. I've seen people like in Illinois, they're really upset because they thought they had a great team and Indiana just trashed them this year. Iowa fans, I know they still have fans, like they have to be kind of upset. Even Wisconsin, teams that were like close. What if the expanded playoff was a few years ago when Wisconsin had their run, right? Like what if it started earlier to where some of these Big Ten teams that didn't get in the playoffs could be in and could go on a run. Like even Iowa with their great defense travels, where they beat an SEC team this year. And I think that's where the Big Ten really kind of wants to push the playoff expansion. But we got to see how much it matters. Because like right now, you have Cignetti, you have like the other model, Ohio State, Ryan Day, still out recruiting everybody in the Big Ten and bringing in, like plucking a transfer here or there. You also have Whittingham coming in, like I mentioned, and his philosophy was to kind of just retain a lot of Michigan guys, knowing that they were highly recruited, and then bring in a lot of the top guys he had at Utah. He didn't bring everybody with him. So I was very surprised that he was able to retain, especially with as many coaches as he brought in, right? But he was able to kind of retain most of Michigan's key talent and then bring in a bunch of superstars from Utah that I think from the preseason rankings I've seen, well, it's like a top 15 team again. I think they finished 11th last year. So you're basically just creating a power team where Matt Campbell instead, he lost most of Penn State's top guys. And he didn't have a recruiting class. And instead, he backfilled by bringing his Iowa State roster. He went the Cignetti route. So those 4 teams in the Big Ten, I want to see how they do next year. I'm not looking at the newer West Coast programs just because, who knows? Oregon should be talented again. They're known chokers. Like you talk about Miami's like program pedigree. Like, oh yeah, we're always going to win, but we never do. Like that's basically Oregon at this point. Hey, we're going to win. We're going to be awesome. And then they never do. Ever in their history. Which is funny why Indiana got it first. A traditional Big Ten team right in the heart of the Big Ten winning it before USC or Oregon or Nebraska. Or heck, even Penn State has been in the Big Ten. That they should have won it in 94, at least a share, but they haven't won it in the Big Ten National Championship. So, will we see one of those teams come to the top? I don't know, but I think we have to find out by Friday. So next week we'll know if the playoffs expand. One of the most ridiculous versions that I've seen a couple conferences push for is they want to go to 16 teams, but they want to take my play-in idea and use that for the bottom 4 because they don't want to see Tulane or JMU or whatever take a bid away from one of the power programs. So in this model, Matt, in this year, Ohio State and Indiana would have got the 2 buys. They would have got a double buy. The first week would have been, instead of JMU traveling to Oregon and Tulane going to Ole Miss, JMU would have played like, I don't know who was the first team out, BYU? They probably didn't want BYU in it though still. So they probably would have jumped them with like Texas or something and been like, oh, you never know. Right? And then on the other one, Tulane would have played Notre Dame. And then that way they can say, well, you know what? We did let those lesser teams in. They just didn't win. And I'm not saying that they're going to lose every time. But I don't see why you can't just include all the conferences then. Right? Just if you're going to do the play-in, just let the bottom 4. Like, why would Notre Dame have to play a play-in game against Tulane? Just let Tulane play the winner of the MAC. Like, to me, I don't care if Notre Dame's in the playoffs at all. They had their chance. They lost 2 games. They've lost to like Marshall in recent times and Northern Illinois or something.
And but now you're starting to chirp a little closer to what I believe. Like getting more conference teams involved. Don't just expand it so that you can fit more from one particular conference in. Because you're already playing each other in the regular season. Make those games be worth something. And if you don't like it, win your conference or be in a conference, Notre Dame. Like, don't be a dick about it.
And that's what I've been saying. If you want to they talk about getting rid of the conference championship game. And if you're a lower conference and you really believe that your best team is going to win the regular season in your conference, then by all means, have the MAC or the Sun Belt, whatever, get rid of their conference championship game where their top team can get eliminated, right? And just put them in and have them play a play-in game against one of the other group of 5 conferences. And if Notre Dame reaches that threshold and they don't have a conference championship game, because that's where the sticking point is right now for people that aren't following. The SEC is saying they don't want to lose their conference championship game because it makes them X amount of money. And I don't care, right? Why couldn't that be playoff game number 1? Well, SEC doesn't want that because then they don't want their second team getting eliminated early, basically. And so something has to give, right? Go back to the conference divisions, right? Because no one would argue that the Big Ten East winner wasn't the best team. And so then their conference championship game against the West could be realistically the first playoff game. And if the West team upsets like Indiana this year, then awesome. They upset them. Or if it's Oregon and they're out, like what's the difference? Oregon's not winning the national championship anyway. It doesn't matter. Like they ended up playing Indiana again. What would be the difference if the Big Ten championship just eliminated Oregon? Nothing would have changed this year. Nothing. So I don't know if they're so convinced on having the SEC championship game. You can't convince me that they couldn't have a showcase as part of the first week of the playoffs where they did like guaranteed bowl matchups. I'm not saying keep the bowl games. I'm saying get rid of that corporate crap. We don't need players jumping in bowls of Frosted Flakes or dumping mayo on themselves, right? I want to have, if they want to have like a big money, let the first round of the playoffs be, okay, you're a lower seed. This one's going to be a Big Ten team, and they have to play an ACC team every year. Or the Big Ten has to play SEC here, and Big 12 has to play ACC or something. Do it that way, but have every conference get a slot too, so that you're not leaving anybody out. Because I think right now, the lucky thing for them is they had 2 teams that haven't been relevant in forever. You said like 20-something years for Miami. They haven't been relevant. So, of course, their fans are going to tune in. Does Miami have a lot of fans? No, they don't. That's why they didn't get invited to the SEC. That's why they didn't get invited to the Big Ten yet. Trust me, they've been trying to get into the Big Ten. And so, where do they go? I don't know. We'll see what the TV ratings are like. I don't think they're out yet. But you had 2 fresh schools come in. How many casual fans tuned in for that? Or did they just say, well, it wasn't one of the big boys? But then again, Ohio State's championship last year with 2 losses, I think they said it was like a 20-something% drop in viewership from Michigan versus Washington, which Washington isn't really a traditional blue blood, but of course Michigan isn't, hadn't been there in a while. Ohio State played Notre Dame, though, a team that hasn't won it in a while either. So you had 2 powers last year not deliver TV ratings. What's going to happen this year? You have 2 non-powers. Or I guess one maybe used to be a power in the 80s, but how many boomers are watching? Could they even figure out ESPN stream? No. So, I don't know. I'm curious to see if they go to a 2014 playoff and they get rid of the conference championship games and then they just load it up with power teams. There's no point. I think at some point the TV ratings have to increase because they've been bad. And the ESPN owning the rights and then just talking about how great the ACC and the SEC are the entire time, I think is alienating a lot of fans. And ESPN is not going to admit that. And so until they get rid of that aspect, because as a casual Michigan fan, I couldn't take the Miami slobbering all over the pregame. They kept talking about how Miami winning would be a fairy tale story. No, it wouldn't. They just paid for all the best guys out of the transfer portal.
Where they spent all of this money on the top recruits.
Yeah, it's the opposite of Indiana. Indiana did not pay for the top recruits. So the narrative from like loser fans crying about that is insane. They couldn't name one standout on Indiana's team from a different team. Maybe Mendoza from Cal, but I guarantee they didn't even know who he went to Cal because they didn't watch one Cal game on TV. Right? You knew Beck played at Georgia. Right there, boom. They took the Georgia quarterback that won. Didn't they win the SEC last year? That won the SEC and then got hurt. They bought him out. And they're like, guess what? We're back, baby. And now we're going to take Duke's QB maybe or Washington's QB. They're like tampering all these QBs. And it's like, all right, that's the fairy tale story here? That's the fairy tale? Not some team that hasn't won with a coach that brought his lower level guys that you're talking about right now not belonging in the playoffs. But he just won a national championship with those same guys. And that one guy from Indiana that had that awesome catch where Cignetti told him to hit the portal, and then he was like, nah, you could probably stay if you don't mind riding the bench. As long as you work hard. And then guess what? He stayed and worked hard. And they said he had no drops all year. That's insane. So, proud for Indiana. I'm proud I'm happy for college football because we had to see another team breathe life into how many programs now. And the more programs that think they have a shot, the better chance of the top teams not loading up on talent. Right? Ryan Day crying about how they had the most talented team isn't going to matter anymore because at some point you have to win. Right? And Indiana right now is winning. And next year they have to have a more talented team, I would think. Maybe not, though. Maybe not. Maybe that was like their peak, and they'll fall down like you see in basketball where a team goes on a run, and then that's it. And everybody celebrates, and then it goes back to like a blue blood type thing where then they go on a couple runs. But I think every team in the Big Ten has to be hungry, and they can sell now what the SEC has been selling where, SEC is the greatest. Come play in the greatest conference. Now, they didn't even play for a national championship for 3 years. In an expanded playoff where the SEC had the most teams probably every year. By far. And they haven't even played. And that 1 year, I mean, Texas wasn't in the SEC yet, but they boxed Florida State out just to put Texas and Alabama in, and then neither of them played. Embarrassing job by ESPN. And I even with the new stream, I hope people just keep cutting ESPN and they start losing and losing to the point where they realize, hey, guess what? It's not working. We got to start having fair coverage again. Because it's like the same thing where people are like, the ESPN's like, people aren't watching hockey. Then they lose all the hockey fans that are diehards. And then guess what? They're buying back hockey on ESPN Plus. And then they're like, see, we love hockey. It's like, no. You just got desperate because you lost a core fan base. You can't cut an entire league out. You can't. Big Ten is the biggest league. We did the data on the show before. They're the most fans. You can't just cut them out and pretend like they don't exist. And then try to prop up Miami that has data showing that they have no fans. They can't even get their stadium half filled. And pretend like they're the greatest fairy tale story of all time. Embarrassing job last night by ESPN. Nothing against Miami fans. Just.
But I think that just goes back that you can't try to pick and choose who you think the story is. Like every time they've historically tried to push some kind of narrative, it's never played out for them, and they never learn. They just continue to just try to find a round peg to jam into the square hole, and it's stupid.
Well, that's why I'm just surprised that they fixate on a couple of teams like winning the national championship. Like they bring up Georgia, Ohio State, Alabama, and LSU. They never mentioned that great Florida State team. I know it was before the playoffs. They never mentioned really Clemson. And I know they hate Harbaugh, so they don't mention Michigan really that much, but they have to in the graphics, which has to be killing them. And so I'm sure there's some other teams that have won that I've forgotten. Like they never bring up USC's great teams ever. And they bring up that Miami team from like 2001 or whatever. And it's like, okay, yeah, they were great. They had all these NFL guys, but like I think the USC team was the best team I've ever seen. And they just pretend like it doesn't exist. And I'm honestly, they always talk about Vince Young. And for whatever reason, they don't like talking about Cam Newton. And I think Cam Newton was more dominant than Vince Young. Like Vince Young had a loaded Texas team. Cam Newton won the national championship by himself. Like it's almost like a Cignetti thing where he had the game on the line. They could have kicked a field goal. They probably would have lost, right? Maybe not. I guess it would have been tied or something. Who knows? But instead, he ran a quarterback draw with Mendoza in the most insane play call that I've seen in a national championship game. Yes, some coaches like kicking onside kick or whatever, and everyone's like, oh, what a great call, or caught him off guard. You don't run a draw on fourth down? Like 4th and 5 or something like that. Just unheard of. And then he fought for a touchdown. Insane. And he's doing it with like Cam Newton type cast around him. I see people saying like, well, Indiana's going to have a bunch of guys drafted. Yeah, that Auburn team had like nobody drafted. And yeah, they made it back to the national championship because they won on that one, and then they were able to use that to kind of boost their recruiting, and then they lost that year to Jameis Winston. But Auburn had nobody. Like if you go back and look at that team, and so yeah, it's funny not to bring it up, but like you can't talk about all these great quarterbacks and then not mention Cam Newton. He's every bit as good as Tim Tebow, and probably better because he went undefeated. And I don't think Tim Tebow in Florida never went undefeated. To my knowledge, I don't know. Did they?
Well, with that, no, because Tim Tebow was crying because he lost.
Yeah.
I have to be focused.
So, I don't know what they can do to fix it. Yeah. You have to have teams like, you have to have Auburn fans. You can't just ignore them, SEC, and like constantly rip them off. You can't constantly rip off Indiana in the national championship, and then they're still so good that they win. Because now you're bringing in a bunch of Indiana fans that admitted they never watched college football, and they're in now, right? At least probably for 3 to 5 years. As long as Cignetti's there, they're going to be in. And I've already seen that they're trying to run him out to the NFL, and he had to come out and say, like, look, I don't care about the NFL. All right? Like, yeah.
Yeah, he had to say that until the Steelers offer him $1 gazillion.
I don't know if he works in the Steelers, though. His main thing is he was a talent evaluator. So it's like a perfect storm where right now with the way the transfer portal works and high school recruiting, talent evaluators win. Because you have to evaluate a bunch of guys from a bunch of different programs and even your own program. You can't just be, well, I'm connected to the XYZ guy. I have to stick with them. Like stubborn or loyal, I guess, which is sad. But I think you can be loyal to a point. But I think right now what they need to do, a lot of these programs, is they're starting to bring in like a GM type position. And their entire job is to help construct the roster. And it's almost like at the NFL. And I think that's why a lot of people are getting mad because they're like, well, I need my coach to be buddies with this guy and pay him in McDonald's bags behind the counter or behind the back door, whatever Ed Orgeron said. Like, yeah, we used to hand them cash in the back door. Now I go in the front door and give them the cash. It's like, all right, awesome, dude. Great. But, like, come on. They gotta have some guy evaluating talent and then keeping those players from transferring. Because I see a lot down here. There's a lot of Clemson fans down here. And they were spoiled pre-NIL because at that point it was a 4-team playoff. And if you could convince guys, hey, we're going to be in the playoffs every year, you could consolidate power. Now with the 12-team playoff, you have a lot of teams that are like, look, we're right there, man. We don't even have to win. We'll be in. They'll put us in. Or like Notre Dame, like, hey, we're in the national championship game. We got ripped off. We won't make that mistake again. We're only going to schedule the most cupcakes of cupcakes for us to play against before we lose in the playoffs next time, right? I mean, the state of Indiana did win a national championship. Notre Dame has to be celebrating that, I think. Because they can do it, right? If Indiana can do it, anyone could do it. But we'll see. We'll look at some next year stuff. I want to get into some NFL coaching. Still no Steelers head coach. looks like Harbaugh had his deal go through with the Giants. And then we have the Dolphins hire Halfley. Looks like Tennessee's hiring Soleil, which I don't get. And then, because didn't the Seahawks, didn't he go back to the Niners and the Seahawks just pounded him? And Tennessee is like, that's our guy.
Well, the Titans have to be kicking themselves because they're like, we could have had a good coach, but instead we ran him back to New England.
Well, New England, I mean, honestly, the Final Four teams have to be the most disappointing for me, and I think most casual fans, right? Because these teams have been in there like in the last decade. I think, have they all? I mean, when was the Seahawks last Super Bowl? But they've all won a Super Bowl recently. Patriots probably with Tom Brady, though, so they haven't been there for a little bit. And the Seahawks, same with Russell Wilson. They haven't been there in a little bit. But like the Broncos are there with Peyton Manning. They paid their Super Bowl. And then the Rams just had one with Stafford when they paid to get their quarterback to win their Super Bowl. And you had the Bears right there. And it was another situation where just the officiating is so weird. If you can convince me, I mean, growing up, we've heard it all from like Pap and stuff where they were like, yeah, the NFL's fixed. Like, yeah, you know. And so then you watch a game where Caleb Williams getting hit in the head, which should be a reviewable play. And then you have the guy that they bring in to gaslight you. Same with like the Indiana guy saying like, well, the Miami guy tackled him on that reception, but he did touch his hands. He did have his hands out. He had hands out there, Matt. So it could go either way, I guess. Like, should he have tackled him? No, but we shouldn't throw a flag because we don't want Miami to get blown out here. And so it's like the Bears, same thing. Like Caleb Williams getting the crap kicked out of him. It's like, just have the rules guy come in and say like, well, the league does not like Caleb Williams, so we're not giving him the benefit of any flags. So if you're watching at home and you want to see a guy get murdered out here, stay tuned. Hit him in the head, punch him, do whatever you need to do. He's getting beat up on TV. We don't care. It's like, okay, awesome. And then he threw that awesome play to get in there, and they're like, I forget even what the flag, there's like a flag to like end it. And then same with the Bills, man. The Bills guy, I've seen this exact play. Michigan had a very similar one against Ohio State where Roman Wilson came across, caught a ball into the end zone, went to the ground, and after he was in like the end zone and on the ground, the Ohio State guy ripped it out. And they were saying like, oh, Ohio State fans were saying that was an interception. And it's like, no, the rule is if the guy is down by contact, he's down, right? Landing on his back and having the ball pinned against his chest, he's down. He survived the ground. Surviving the ground rule does not mean that the defender can come in and rip the ball out, right? And then say, like, guess what? You didn't survive the ground. Because they had the still footage where and of course, Matt, did they freeze it during the game like they do during college games? No. The NFL can't do that, right? They always put out the crappiest footage. It looks like you're watching the JFK assassination footage like on a handrail. Like it's like all pixelated, and they're like, normally we have great footage here, but we can't trick you into believing what we want you to believe if we show you the real footage. And so the guy's on his back, the ball, Broncos fans telling me, oh, the ball bounced when he hit the ground. It did not leave his body, bro. You have the still where the ball is pinned with two hands against his body. The Broncos defender did not have a hand on it at that point. As he's falling, he reaches in, uses his momentum from falling to rip the ball out. Great play? Yes. Tie goes to the offense, though. Game over. Bills are in. And I really think in the universe, for some reason, yeah, maybe Mendoza's right. Maybe God does care about football, and he was just praying so much that he willed them to a national championship. And God was like, well, the officials are trying to screw the Bills here. I'm just going to make their quarterback break his leg. Bam. Right? On a kneel down. Because I saw them going back through, and they've said multiple times that it happened on the kneel down because he kind of bounced into it and he kind of rolled awkwardly and broke his ankle. Which I thought, that was a weird way for him to like jump into it, but whatever. I didn't think that he did. I thought it was a fake injury, like, oh, he's hurt. Yeah, right. Sure he is. But you can't, I mean, if you're a Bills fan, and same with the Lions, they get the benefit of no calls either. And apparently the Bears, for some reason, which is crazy because Chicago's a giant city that hasn't won really anything. Haven't won in college level. Have they won at baseball? Maybe. When was that Cubs World Series? Years ago? I think the White Sox had one year before. They were good with Jordan. Right? Did the Blackhawks win there a little bit there a while ago? Yeah. I don't think they've won recently. But in football, man, they haven't won anything since the 80s. They had one. And they had Caleb Williams make a great play. And they're like, you know what? We don't care. We want the Rams to come in there. And it's amazing that the NFL continues to let McDonald just like steal signs and win with the Seahawks, right? Because there's no way he was a good coach. There's no way Michigan could have won at the college level without some type of like trickery or deceit, Matt, right? With these great NFL coaches, no way. So they have too many guys. They have Chris Partridge out there, a known guy that, well, I guess the NCAA cleared him, but still, he's out there. He's a horrible, horrible coach, right? Only cheating. Jay Harbaugh, also just a cheater. And for people that don't know, that's clearly sarcasm. They basically have a bunch of Michigan coaches that won the national championship coaching for them, and they've been just throttling teams. Where the game was so hard to watch, the Niners be embarrassed. That's why, like, if you watch your team get embarrassed, and then, or you watch a team get embarrassed, and then your team turns around and hires that coach. Ooh, man, that's gotta hurt. That's gotta hurt, especially because like the Bills coach came out and like, say what you think, he just watched his team get ripped off. Right? Of course he should be pissed. And they're like, you know what? We got to fire him. And maybe it is a coach thing, right? Because I watched Harbaugh get no calls for him at Michigan, and now they hire Whittingham, and everyone's loving him in the media. I don't know what to do. I feel like there has to be some type of trick, right? Or they can't like our coach. They hate all of our coaches. I don't know what's going on. And so maybe the Bills, by hiring a coach, they need to hire a coach everybody likes. They need to hire Bill Cowher, Matt. He's been in the booth for a while. I don't know if he still has it in him to coach.
They could just throw money at Tomlin. He's never had a losing season.
I was going to say that. Tomlin could be another guy. He could prove it. They say that he couldn't win. He needs a great quarterback to win. He has Josh Allen, a guy that also people say can't win.
He wouldn't be taking over Bill Cowher's team.
This could be it, Matt. This could be, we're speaking it in. Tomlin to the Bills, you think?
That makes sense.
That makes too much sense. Because like
and then McDermott to the Steelers, and they'll trade for Josh Allen.
Yeah, but they have Arch Manning coming in, right? Not this year. They have to wait another year.
Yeah, see, they'll have to wait a year. In the meantime, we can get Josh Allen, trade for him. He doesn't want to be in Buffalo anymore.
What if he went to the Steelers and won like 4 Super Bowls? Then you'd be pumped.
Then he'd be up there. Terry Bradshaw is the greatest.
Terry Bradshaw, man.
He called his own plays.
Who, Terry Bradshaw?
Yeah.
Then, Matt, that's because computers didn't exist. How would he get a call from his coach in the headset?
Exactly.
Yeah,
they just said, hey, go call these plays.
How would a super fan coach get footage from the iPhones to tell him what plays to call?
He just went in the huddle, was like, hey, go deep. I'll throw it to you.
Yeah, so I feel like that's an easy thing to do back then. You didn't have that. Let's see if there's a tracker. I want to see what these other ones are. Because like I like how they announce like, hey, we've interviewed this guy. Could you imagine if that was like your job? Like you went to interview and the school was like just like tweeting out that they interviewed you and you're like, we don't think you're cool though. So you're not getting the job, but we want people to know that we rejected you. Because that's where. What?
We want people to know we're talking about, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess maybe it helps. So, like, the Falcons hired Stefanski. We'll see how that works out, right? Because he really botched that Watson trade. He basically lost his entire locker room. So he has a chance to take over, and doesn't he have another quarterback controversy? Or did they get rid of Cousins? Because they have Penix. I would be hiring the worst backup that I could just so that there was no controversy, and then I'm rolling with it. Right? So, like, let's see. Halfley, hired by the Dolphins. Very strange move. Giants get John Harbaugh. Then Saleh. And those are the main head coaching hires right now. And there's more coaches that seem like they're great coaching names because they've been around forever. But these guys haven't really been winning either. So I think, plus you look at like what Ben Johnson did, where it looked like he was the entire Lions' success. Getting close. Probably should have went to the NFC Championship game this year. And then Vrabel coming in and turning things around. And he was almost like a lame duck hire, right? They were talking about him not even getting another NFL job and having to go back to college. So he turned it around. And then you look at the team that didn't have success with them, the Titans. And it's like, how could anyone trust their judgment? Because he's winning with a rookie quarterback, Drake May.
Yeah.
So anybody could do that. Let's get into predictions, and then we'll see if there's anything else you want to hit on this week. So now we have the Rams, Seahawks. Who do you got in that one?
Rams.
Seahawks, dude, I'm riding. Michigan coach and staff. They're great winners. Know how to win. They have the team playing. The defense has been phenomenal.
It'll be like a reminder of that Orange Bowl where Jabril Peppers didn't play. You have Jared Verse and Braden Fifth for Florida State. You got all those Michigan coaches.
Well, their games have been decided by what? 1 and 2 points. So they split in the regular season. But there's a difference where the Rams didn't look good. The Seahawks have looked good. So you might be right. Where you need Orange Bowl, Michigan came out flat that year because the star was missing. I don't think the Seahawks are missing any stars. This comes down to Sam Darnold, dude. If he's seeing ghosts again, they're done. But he could basically elevate himself to superstar status with a Super Bowl. Stafford's old. He was making poor decisions. I don't know. I'm feeling it's going to be a pretty decent sized win too. So which means I'm probably wrong and the Rams will blow them out. Then on the AFC side, dude, who you got? Broncos, Patriots.
Well, they don't have a quarterback. They were talking about trying to hire Roethlisberger. So
did they?
Yes.
I saw they were trying to see if it was possible for them to get Aaron Rodgers to play, which is even funnier.
So if you're trying to get Aaron Rodgers, you're trying to get Big Ben, he's like, I feel like he said he's in really good shape. So really good shape for him.
Who, Roethlisberger?
Really yeah.
Well, he only has a couple more days, bro. Isn't it Sunday, the game?
Yeah, but I think his wife just stepped in and was like, no, dog, you're not doing that.
Well, I you know that it's bad whenever the coach comes out and they're like, Stidham, bro, I had to tell him at practice, quit making our defense look bad. Did you see that? I'm like, all right, if coach comes in and is joking about their backup quarterback making their defense look bad, they're just trying to hype him up, right? There's no way. I feel like we're going to get like a weird, you're probably right. We're going to get an LA Patriots Super Bowl, and it's going to be horrible, and no one's going to want to watch it. And it'll be like last time. Didn't they play that one year Tom Brady won? It was like 10-9 or something like that. It's like a horrible low score, and everyone complained. I have a feeling this is like a dead year. And it could have been so fun. Like Josh Allen could have got his first Super Bowl, or like Caleb Williams could have been doing crazy things, and we could have just had new blood. And instead, you're like we're talking about a Sam Darnold redemption arc, or a team without a quarterback at all. Because they talked about Nick Foles, and I thought, oh man, what if they signed the ultimate backup quarterback, Nick Foles, to be their quarterback? He did it once, Matt.
He did do it once.
He could do it again.
He almost caused the city of Brotherly Love to burn down.
And then they got rid of him for whatever reason. It's like, yeah, let's stick with Wentz. That was horrible.
Jersey was selling.
Yep, I know. That's a big key part for some of the calls for the official. It's just so weird now where it's like, you can go online and see where before it was always like 50-50, where both teams thought that their team was getting ripped off. But now it's like very clear. It's like, okay, yeah, everybody thinks that Miami's getting all the calls against Indiana. Or like everyone thought that the Bills got ripped off. And the NFL is like, no, some people didn't believe that. Some people didn't. And they're like, who? Broncos fans? They're like, yeah, see? Broncos fans. Oh, okay. And then it's like karma. And then I saw there was a petition going around, like in 1970, it was like Michigan beat Ohio State or tied or something, and then they had the tiebreaker, but because they had their quarterback get hurt, the Big Ten voted to send Ohio State, which means everyone hates Michigan in the Big Ten for like decades. So like they were saying, could the NFL do the same thing? Knowing that horrible call cost the Bills the game, and then the Broncos quarterback get hurt, could they just vote and put the Bills in instead? And I'm like, that would be the most insane precedent where they're like, you know what, we messed up. It was a catch. And since Bo Nix is out, we're putting the Bills in real quick. And it's like, we just fired our coach. Like, well, come on, guys. No one's going to watch this game. No one wants to watch Broncos Patriots when it's a 20-point blowout, where all the Patriots are doing are just like running the ball. Right? Man, football. Is there anything else you want to talk about, or anything else I missed this week?
I don't know. Let me check here.
I'll see if anyone else got hired in the meantime. Oh yeah, Harbaugh's getting a new offensive coordinator, rumored to be Mike McDonald, bro. That'll be classic. Everyone will say when he's running Harbaugh's offense, and everyone's saying like, that's weird. That's not what his offense looks like. I'll just laugh secretly and say, I knew it. He's known for his creativity, which is not Jim Harbaugh, bro.
Well, I think we're in a pretty good place. The portal window closed, so at least for the short term, there shouldn't be a lot of movement. I'm sure there's like the 5-day window for Miami and Indiana guys, because they're going to hop in or out. But we should be approaching a dead zone here pretty soon.
Yeah, and they said there's a 20 or 48 hour maybe transition period, so we might still get other teams players that entered Friday processing tomorrow maybe. I don't know if they counted Monday. I would assume that was a holiday they were off. So we'll see if there's any other ones trickling in last minute. Any last minute surprises, right?
Yeah.
So also, my boy Andrew Jones got elected to the Hall of Fame with Carlos Beltran. It's so weird. With Jeff Kent. It's almost like they're like, you know what? We're going to pick guys that Barry Bonds were better than and just put them in out of spite. Because these guys, like I like Andrew Jones. He had honestly kind of a shorter career compared to some of these guys, I think. Beltran is like one guy that has enough hits, homers, and runs and steals that the people on his list are Bonds, Mays, and Alex Rodriguez. But of course, you can't put Bonds in, right? Is Alex Rodriguez even in? I don't even know. Did he get in? I can't remember. Because that's what it just annoys me. Nope, he's out. He's out so far. He's well short. So a guy that isn't as good as Alex Rodriguez or Barry Bonds gets in with what, 80% of the vote? 84%. And then where's Alex? He's not even on this list. Oh, he got Alex Rodriguez only had 40% of the vote. But he's way better, right? Because at that point, it's not even just let AI pick the Hall of Fame and just start a new one. Call it like the best, like what's something like the greatest Hall of Fame, and then just do that, or like the real Hall of Fame. Because the bias of some of these writers, like no one cares about these writers at all. I feel like they should just have. It's almost like whenever social media or like some news, like they have like an old picture. I feel like anyone doing in the media should have an up-to-date picture and like what their stats are so we can compare. Like, what did that guy? Did he ever play sports at all? Not putting in Alex Rodriguez, right? Does he have any like traffic tickets where he's like not listening to the laws or anything? Like, I want to know what guys are voting against my man Barry Bonds. And I don't even like Alex Rodriguez as a player, but honestly, he should be in too. That's my last thing for the show. Got anything else you want to talk about?
No, that's it.
I am glad Andrew Jones got in. I was always a fan of his. He did get the Braves that one World Series, and so that was good because that could have been horrible for my Braves to go how many division championships and never win the national championship. Jeez, have Indiana on the brain, right? Because that's the difference. It's like Oregon winning all those Pac-12 championships and never winning. That could have been the Braves, dude. But Andrew Jones helped get that one. And then they got another one recently. So let's get another one if things don't fall apart. But that's it. Offseason about to begin once we get through the NFL, which is going to be a dud. I can feel it. But maybe we'll get a new Steelers coach. And we'll see if we hop on for a special show when that happens. So keep an eye out for that. Thanks for listening, and we will see you next week.